intro music? Yeah! Woohoo!
Incursions are here, whether you love them, hate them, doesn't honestly matter. You have to participate in them. I mean, I guess you technically could just sit in a level 3 system, throw up a shield and ignore, but generally speaking, you know what I mean. It's something that we all have to participate in, as in it is launching, running, and when it does, we all have to be there if we want to be in the game. So in this video, I want to change it up just a smidge from what we do a lot of times and focus on crews so that you can know what to do if you're doing A, B, C, or D. Now, we'll go ahead and talk about some problems with the game in general in this video. That's when we'll get to the PvP section of it, because as predicted, Scopely broke PvP again. But we're also going to talk about the generalized how-tos, where-tos, and what-tos with Incursions as a whole. So right now, if you're wondering what server's being attacked and where we're at, we are currently on server 41. Shout out to server 41, an extremely cool group of people. I've had a fantastic time talking to all of y'all. They left, sadly, they had a level 63 and a level 60 who had left their bases open in territory, allowing us to score 30 trillion points in right around 1 hour. But that said, it's definitely far from over. For those that don't know, this is a 24-hour incursion, so it will run until tomorrow. So don't think that just because we got this big lead that is guaranteed we still got to push for it. But again, everybody from 41 has been nothing but kind and nice. And one thing that I enjoy and love about Incursions, I know I'm rabbit trailing a little bit, apologies, but I do got to give a big thank you, is you just get to meet all these cool people. And they're just very, very nice and kind, and they just say nothing but nice things. So very rarely do we run into, just jerks. I just want to give a shout out to Server 41 for being great sports, because they were being nice, like in all the DMs, while all this bad stuff was happening. And then every now and then you got to throw them a little hint, like, hey, we'll talk about this here in just a second. But let's talk crewing. So as you can see on the screen, we currently have a raid going on. This is a little bit of a baby raid. Less than 1 trillion left on this base at the time of me doing this. And oh, look at the balls on this guy making a video while he's raiding and not even shielded. Look at this guy. Yeah. The biggest raid that I've had today, I was getting about 35 billion per pull, and I can throw that on the screen. But in terms of raiding, there's only one ship that most people are going to use. If you're a player in the early 30s, you're going to want to unlock the Amalgam, which is currently what I'm doing. As you can see, my Amalgam just pulled a 1 billion pull. Now let's talk about the crew of how I'm able to do that and why I'm able to pull what I am. Now I have maxed out my Amalgam. If you're a player in the 40s who has not maxed out their Amalgam, the Voyager can actually help you do this using commerce insignias, speed up this loop just a little bit. But here's the crew that I'm currently running. I've got Baitor, 4 of 11, and then Stan, as well as 2 officers below decks who are helping me out a little bit more. Below decks, I have Strange New World La'an, who increases my base max cargo by 30% for her tier. And then I have over here Enterprise E Data, which is a 55% boost to max cargo. All of these officers I'm using to boost my overall cargo size to 18.5 million for where my ship is at. Then, of course, I've got the researches and research trees that also boost it up a little bit. Now, you might ask, well, why are you using Baitor? Baitor being used for her below deck ability, for her officer ability, which is when on the Amalgam, boost the Amalgam's bonus loot ship ability by 22%. And that, of course, is this ability right here, Combat Scavenger. So even though this base has less than 1 trillion in it, I'm still able to pull 1 billion worth, even though I've only got an 18 mil because of this cargo crew. And this is something that we would recommend for everybody. If you have an Amalgam, this is the basic setup that you want to run. You want to run a Baitor because you want her to improve the ship ability. You want to run anybody that increases your cargo size. See, I've got 45 there, a 40% here. If you have a cargo officer that does better out there, then you want to look at that as an option. You want to get as big of a bonus as you can. That means Baitor doesn't necessarily have to be, by the way, the captain, because her captain's ability is when on a ship that is using cloaking, increasing the duration by 20%. Now, a lot of players will use Baitor for this ability on an Amalgam to try to cloak in, especially during territory capture, sneak in, score points, etc. But she can be a sidecar depending on what you want to load out with. And when we talk about the overall officer sets and what all that you can run, etc., You just mainly want to focus on boosting cargo. Like you've seen me use 2 of 11. Well, 2 of 11's ability for other purposes, as you see the capture right there, is increasing it by 20%. But I don't want to replace 4 or stun because obviously those are bigger. Those synergy would help this just a little bit. I guess I could throw the synergization up on the screen, and then you can kind of see where we're kind of, see what we're working with here. Do you get the idea? The whole point is we want to boost cargo by as big as possible. Get that cargo up nice and juicy so that we can take advantage of it with the Amalgam ship ability. And that's really all there is to the crew. Like, that simple. That's not a negative. It just truly is that simple. Now, if you're curious on that captain's ability, your max synergization is 15% per side. So 4 of 11 would knock it up 15. Well, let's jump out real quick and let's talk about some other crewing. So this is how you want to run your Amalgam. And technically, you would want to do stun 4 of 11 on your horizons and stuff if you don't have an Amalgam yet and you're participating in these runs. Next thing that's really important, everybody would jump to PvP, but the next thing I would say is important is your speed crew. Now, why is speed crew important? Because whether it's a Rialta, whether it's a Talios, whether it's your Mantis coming in to sting, a lot of times when you get into PvP, it's not about who's got the best crew or the best ship, it's getting in fast, especially for raid defense. Raids by themselves, like the raid going on in the background here, are pretty boring because there's no active defense on this one. We had a nice active defense earlier, and yes, being strong and having a big PvP ship is nice, but what you want to do is have a speed crew to come in and whack people's Amalgams. And even at these levels, you see these Amalgams aren't necessarily that strong. Some of you might go, well, 6 million seems pretty strong, but when you talk about how effective they are in terms of being 6 million, it's really not. Even this 9 million from Chaos, even mine at 6.7, that's really not strong. You're talking about G3 epics and even G3 rare ships able to take those out. So here's the thing. You want to run speed. Now, what are some of the primary speed crews in today's game? Here is a very well-known one that has had a slight adjustment in recent days if you've picked up Enterprise E Riker. Now, why Enterprise E Riker? Well, that's kind of simple. Claw, you see I have as a captain, gives a 25% boost to impulse speed. But Enterprise E Riker is double that, giving 50% of a boost to that impulse speed, while you still can have your Una over here, giving you just a flat 15 improvement. And then you, of course, have Curon, who gives you a 30% boost after you kill a hostile or an opponent. So you want to hit something real quick and then go smash somebody else for an even bigger boost. As you can see, like as I'm sitting in space right now, my personal impulse speed is 268. And it will vary based on the research that you've done. Remember, there are researches to improve impulse speed, as well as your officers and the standard rate that it has, just period. You see that little amalgam? There are little amalgams. Oh my glitchy goodness. There are little amalgams in my base right now. I'm getting very distracted, but look at that. That is literally, there is a baby amalgam right here. Like legit, you see it? There's a baby amalgam. Come on, Scope. It's adorable, but come on. The speed crew's being a really big deal. Now, if you don't have Una, that's fine. You still would use Claw and then Synergy with Curon. Don't have Curon, that's fine. Run Claw full Synergy. Why do I say run Claw full Synergy? Because you want to build on top of this right here. That 25% boost. You might go, well, is that even that much? With Synergy, it's even more, because if you synergize, if you had full Synergy, it goes up to 35%. And sure, that by itself maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but it will help out. If you had an impulse of 100 and you added 35%, that's 135 impulse. That's a pretty significant boost, especially when your opponents and your amalgams are simply not that fast. For example, I'm level 49. My impulse on my amalgam is 171. So my Talios is almost, I mean, it's not twice as fast, but it's significantly faster than my amalgam, and this is going to help you catch up and beat those and take them down. And it would be even better if you had Enterprise E Riker. Last but not least, we're going to talk about PvP, and there's one PvP meta in the game today. People ask all the time, are there counters for it? Technically, there are, you can beat it, but a lot of this comes down to who attacks first, truly. And this is the number one at the moment. It is Carol Freeman, Honor Guard Worf, and Lorca. Again, there are slight nuances and ways make this work, but in terms of the ability to punch up, this is unero numero uno, and that just is how it is. Now, the levels of these officers and the who attacks first is critical here. In fact, it's so powerful. Let me put up a screenshot of a player in the 50s, like a Sanctus, whooping a ship that y'all didn't even know probably was out yet, the actual Titan, not the Titan that you're used to go, ooh, max fortification, like a real deal, like Riker Titan, like, oh, Captain Riker on this one. The real Titan getting its tail absolutely mollywopped by this crew. It's broken, it's OP. They didn't do the math right when they created it, so this is kind of the thing. Now, if you don't have this, you can still PvP. You're just not going to be guaranteed to be as effective. So if I come into some of these crews, you see that's the only PvP crew I use anymore. I just don't really do PvP as much because it's not as fun. And yes, it truly does matter about attacking first. I do want to point out that these officers here, the Picard Worf, Picard Riker, and Picard do have value in PvP. See, increases your base weapons damage. Why does that matter? Well, in a world of isolytics, if you can increase the base and then you hit a critical and then you have isolytic, that just makes that number at the very end even larger. So you're going to get more value, but you're limited on when you can use these because, as you can see, combat against an explorer during combat. So if I was getting hit by an interceptor, he wouldn't do jack diddly kumquat. And that's just a tier 1 one, by the way, but something to keep in mind. But your standard runs, or even you could say your non-standard runs, still have a lot of power. So if we wanted to run this real quick, we're just going to put Damar up there and Billups, just because I have Garrick somewhere, you would see some value in running some of the newer officers that came out with the last lower decks arc with somebody like this. Again, because of isolytic damage and isolytic cascade, combining with those artifacts you have, officers, etc. So when it comes to crewing, the PvP is the hardest one because for a lot of people, that's not simply available, but that's okay. You can still make an impact in this game. You can still find ways to make an improvement to your own play to move up the leaderboards, if you will, because I've done decently well in today's rating leaderboards. And even if an Incursions isn't big for you, there's a server pride that comes into it. At least it is for me. I'm currently ranked number 5 in the raid leaderboard. I need to stay in that top 5. But anyway, there are your crews for raiding. Speed crew, which can be great on anything from a Rialta all the way up to your beefiest of beefy ships and even PvP. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section down below. And I do want to sincerely say that please don't take any of this as like, oh, I feel like you have to do Incursions. I think Incursions is just kind of one of those things that they have forced upon us. But at the same time, I just want you to find what enjoyment that you can. And honestly, if your enjoyment is fighting back, well, just go beat up all the people with the amalgams. It can be fun. Find whatever fun you can today. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with the Space Cowboys. Deuces. That's me. Catch you on the next Star Trek Fleet Command video. Hopefully these basics get you raring and going. The next Incursions or even this one.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.